mai roto, tuta mai waho. Kia tau e te mauritu, te mauri ora ki te katoa, humie, huie, taike. Hello, my name is Matthew. I'll be a facilitator today. So a little bit about me. I'm the program lead for Volunteer Wellington's Youth Impact Program. I'm currently a first year student at Te Hanga Waka for the University of Wellington, and I've been involved in volunteering for a few years now. So before I introduce our speakers, just kind of a couple quick notes for everyone attending. So at the end of our session, time allowing, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions at any point, whether it's general or directed to a specific speaker, feel free to pop them into the Q&A chat and we'll have that all sorted out. So we'll start by introducing our speakers. So the first speaker I'm going to introduce is Emma. So Emma, could you please start off by telling us a bit about yourself, the organisation you're representing and your role within it? Oh, yeah, I believe your microphone's off.
I'm sorry, I heard all this feedback and I was like, oh no, is that me? All right, I'll start again. Kia ora everybody, lovely to be here and to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Ko ingarangi, ko airangi te whakapaparanga mai, ko te whanganui a tāra te whenua tupu, ko pone ki te kāinga, he kai whakahaere e matua o i YEA, yeah, Youth Employability, Aotearoa. Ko tangata te riti aho, ko Emma Godwin toka ingoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So I am the director of Youth Employability Aotearoa. We are a systems change organisation, and our mission is to see all young people transition successfully from the world of education into the world of work. So we look at the big picture, and we look at what projects we can do to help shift the system to make that transition really successful for our young people. And that's me. Shall I hand over to Logan? Kia ora. So Logan is our youth lead for YEA. Logan, up to you now.
Thank you. Kia ora everyone, I'm Logan Hempel. I'm 18, I'm based in Aotearoa. I actually run a small portfolio of businesses that I started when I was around 15. I ended up coming into YEA's orbit through the youth employment space, met Emma, and ended up taking on a youth lead role on the Good Youth Employer project. Basically, my job is to be the person in the room that goes, actually, that's not how a young person would experience that, and to also make sure that the voice doesn't get lost as the project develops. Thank you very much.
Nice. So same question, we'll hand over to Cam.
Thanks, Matthew. Kia ora koutou, ko Cam Takawangawa. I am a 21-year-old. I'm a third-year student here at Te Hanga Waka Victoria University Wellington, doing mathematics and statistics right now. So glad to see we have some other folks in the room in the uni journey. It's pretty cool. I've been involved in volunteering projects for some time through organizations like Rotary. Right now, currently very involved with the Student Volunteer Army, is who I'm here speaking on behalf of. I am, I've been their president at Vic for a bit, currently outgoing, so at the end of my term, working on some handover for my team, and I work with our organization nationally. I really help with strategic direction, and I'm just really bring a youth voice to the table when we talk about the board and the foundation. And yeah, as said by Logan, said very well, you have to inform people how the youth think these days, and I think it's really, really important to have that voice. So I'm lucky to be that. The SVA as a whole formed back in the Christchurch earthquakes, originally dealt a lot with disaster response. Now we do that, and that's been very relevant to Wellington recently, as well as we do some business as usual volunteering. And we really work with upskilling our youth, giving them the confidence, giving them the employability, and kind of building some community resilience. So that's our whole thing. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thanks, Cam. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce Marcail to introduce herself.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Marcail. I am here representing Take 10. So they're a charity organisation who operate in Wellington and Auckland town now on Friday and Saturday nights. We run a truck from 10 p.m. till 3 a.m, handing out water and providing a safe space for young people and students. I've been volunteering with them since 2021, and I've recently come on board with them in a paid position as a team lead and helping with their social media. I've been volunteering with them since 2021 and with a number of other organisations and political campaigns and lots of other youth-focused roles. So yeah, and I'm 24 and I just recently, I'm about to graduate from Victoria University Te Herenga Waka.
Thank you, Sia. Once again, I think it's so cool to have everyone here and thank you all for being here. So I'd now like to invite Emma to give a presentation on the Good Youth Employer Project.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll do that. I'll just share my screen with everybody. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we're all here is because it's Youth Week. Yay! The theme of Youth Week is taringa whakarongo ki te reo o te nā taiohi. So that is our voices matter, we deserve to be heard. So I'm not going to take up too much space because I'm clearly not a young person anymore. I'm just going to talk about our Good Youth Employer Project, why we are doing this project, what it means, what the purpose is, and where we're at the moment. And hopefully this will provide some really useful insights for you guys. I just want to be clear that this isn't a project that's targeted in terms of managing volunteers. It's really about managing young people. But I can actually say that throughout my life, I've worked in the NGO space. I've managed a lot of volunteers. I've created a lot of documentation on how to be a good volunteer manager, done a lot of training in this space. And in my personal opinion, looking after volunteers is no different to looking after staff. The only difference is really a legal one. So there are certain legal responsibilities and obligations you have to your employees that you don't have to volunteers. But otherwise, I think the principles in terms of how you engage with your staff or your volunteers are the same. So hopefully this is really useful for you guys, but I'll run through this pretty quickly. So this is the Good Youth Employer Project. We kicked it off last year in 2025. I've just told you a wee bit about who we are already, so I'll skip that little bit, but I'll talk about the project, the challenge that we wanted to meet, the opportunity that we saw, who's been involved, the journey so far, some insights for you, and then the lovely Logan is going to give you a little sneak peek into the resource that we're creating. So this is our fabulous chair. She is a 24-year-old lawyer who works for Hamilton City Council. This is Charlotte, and she heads our organisation. And we are funded by the Todd Foundation, J.R. McKenzie Trust, and the Lynn Reynolds Trust. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, this is the sort of thing that we think about all the time in systems change mahi, is what's happening to young people at the moment on the ground. So as you will all have heard, the unemployment statistics and the NEET statistics are really terrible in New Zealand at the moment. So 17.3% of youth are unemployed currently. Really sadly, it's really bad for disabled young people in particular. So 46.3% of them are NEET. So that means they're not in employment, education or training. And the other thing that we look at as systems change organisations is what does the future look like? So importantly, and this is really important for NGOs as well, is to understand the demographic changes that are coming to Aotearoa. So 40% of the workforce will be under 40. They'll be Māori and Pacifica by 2041. So it's really important to understand what that means for your organisation culturally and what you need to adapt and change to support these people into your workspaces. We then also look at what's going on globally. So you've probably all seen the memes about Gen Z versus boomers and so on. So, but 74% of the global workforce will be Gen Z and millennials by 2030. So that's literally just around the corner. Okay, it's kind of huge. Only 6% say they want to reach senior leadership roles, which is kind of sad to see. And of course, things have changed a little bit in terms of who's planning to leave their employment because of the current employment conditions out there, in terms of there aren't really jobs going, so people are kind of staying in their role for longer, but they're not necessarily happier in their role, and we want to do something about that.
Emma, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing the presentation on the thing.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, let me try that again. We did test this earlier and it did work. Okay, all right.
Nice.
Is that working this time?
Yeah, all good.
Oh, sorry guys. Cool. Okay, so I won't go back. We'll just keep rocking on. So there was this really important report done in 2016 in South Auckland, which looked at why is sort of beef going on between young employees and older employers in the workplace. And they identified it was really an attitude gap issue that was going on. But if you look deeper into that, there was all sorts of problems around communication styles and understandings and assumptions and so on. So that was the challenge that we wanted to address, but we saw this as an opportunity because we wanted to develop a resource that would empower employers to enhance the engagement and retention of young employees by creating an environment that supports young people as the new generation of the workforce. So this was quite a nice little quote that came through. So Genevieve is the founder of Pick Me. She's a real techie lady and she's done some really cool stuff. You should go and look at her on LinkedIn. So she saw employers seeking retention and employees seeking belonging, and that was a great commonality. It creates an opportunity for the two to meet in the middle. So these were the kind of gems that we were looking for when we went through this project. So just give a little nod to all the people who donated their time to this project last year. We had all these people involved in these different working groups. So we had an industry focused working group, disabled focus, Pacifica, Māori, neurodivergent, training, so that was really looking at the NEETs experience, and local government. And these people volunteered their time to do four workshops over a period of 6 months. We also had a couple of youth leads, Meg Lister and Holly Duff, who did the youth peace engagement. So while all this was going on with these experts in the field, we also had our youth leads going out into community groups and talking directly with young people, running workshops. We called them kai and kōrero sessions. We'd bring pizza and drinks and so on. And we'd ask young people what works for them in the workplace, or what would work for them in an ideal situation. We heard a lot of bad stories, of course, as you do, sadly, but we were really interested in what they wanted to see for their future. So the first workshop, we defined the problem, and the second one, we explored the different perspectives and existing resources to see what was out there, and typically it was a whole lot of PDFs. Workshop 3, we integrated the youth voice at that point because all the youth voice sessions had been completed, and we then, a small group of us sort of workshopped a prototype that we then pitched to the final workshop, and there were 2 prototypes that we did, and then they chose one that's called Start Smart that Logan will show you shortly. So where we're at the moment is we got funding, yay, we secured some funding for this year, so we were able to continue with this project, which is, no mean feat at the moment. It's really tough out there for guys, and I'm sure many people on the call totally understand what it's like to survive as an NGO at the moment. But we're really fortunate to secure more funding. So we created a project team, which is led by Tamara Buckland, who is the founding manager of Bloom HQ. And she's our project manager, and we have Logan, as you know. We also have partnered with Student Job Search. So the purpose of partnering with them is that A, they understand youth voice, but also they have this amazingly huge network of about 5,000 employers that they can reach into, because we want to recruit employers into this prototype pilot. So I'll just talk a little bit about the insights that we gained from the process that we went through of those 6 months. So these are the key ones, the commonalities, the desire for positive relationships. And so what I'm talking about here is both young employees and employers have these in common, right? So both have a desire for positive relationships. Both have an aspiration for quality work. They're seeking mutually beneficial agreements. The importance of communication was an interesting one, because I've worked in this space for about 7 years now. And I often would hear from employers that young people are just terrible communicators. Constantly heard that. But what's really interesting was that through the youth voice piece that we did, the kai and kōrero sessions, we constantly heard from young people that employers were terrible communicators and that they weren't communicating effectively with them. So that was really interesting. They both have a desire for success, right? Both the employer wants success for the business and for themselves and for their employees, and the employees want the business to be successful, and they want to be successful in their mahi. There was a mutual apprehension of working together, and we see that from employers. They're nervous sometimes about employing young people. They see the memes, or they've heard some terrible stories, or they've had a negative experience themselves. But there still exists a really strong desire to engage and to learn from each other, which is really positive. And of course, obviously at the moment, the work environment's really different, but during COVID, there was a real need to address the worker shortages, and those conditions are likely to come back when the economy recovers as well. So there's a lot of companies in New Zealand that have, and this will be true for NGOs as well, like an aging workforce, right? And so they need to recruit young people, but they need to learn how to engage with them and work well successfully with them. And the need for mutual respect and accountability was really strong as well. Particularly the respect piece came through loud and strong. So our design principles for this product that we're creating is accessibility is really important, inclusivity, tikanga considerations is really key, and affordability, because we ain't got much money. And also, of course, the sustainability is a big question mark as well for any NGO like ours. Actionability, and that means that it needs to be a product that people can put into practice really quickly. And that was one of the problems with the PDF examples that we had found during our research phase, was that they weren't easily actionable. And then, of course, I have to give a shout out to Aotearoa, which is the peak body for youth development in Aotearoa. And they have a mana tairohi framework that all of government is required to adhere to. And so we base our framework on this as well. And now I will pause and hand over to Logan to give you a little sneak preview of what we're working on at the moment.
Can we all see that?
Yes, thanks, Logan.
Yep. Okay, so this is basically the MVP minimal viable product that we've built for the Start Smart project. And it's essentially a practical guide built on the real conversations with the rangatahi all across New Zealand. So employers are meant to pick what's relevant and use it when they need it, essentially. And it's a better start for every young person you hire. And it essentially just guides them through each one of these sections, from before they start to their first day, first week, and then a bit of a know your person section. So from anxious first day to thriving employee, so the problem, the tool, and the outcome, right? And it's basically two perspectives in one resource. So for the employer, you'll know exactly what to do and when, and for the young person, you'll feel like a person, not necessarily just a placeholder or another name on payroll, essentially. And these are just some quotes from what the young people actually had to say from the research that we conducted. And then the 4 moments that, like I said, shape everything. So just to walk through the first module, this is before they start. So just add some quick quotes that the employer can take a look at and utilize. And then also just a little 4 selection tick box of things that an employer can do to help an employee before they actually start. So where to go and when, what to wear if there's some sort of dress code or dress standard, a rough shape of their first day, and then also just a bit of a permission not to know everything, right? And then this is a very crucial part of something that we found during the research, was to write down your unwritten rules. And this is something that a lot of young people mentioned pretty consistently, was they felt like there were these unwritten rules that float around the business, where the legacy employees knew it completely, but obviously when a new person comes in, they feel almost a bit like an outsider because of those. So for breaks, what do people actually take them? Is it okay to leave your desk? Does 30 minutes actually mean 30? What happens when something goes wrong, right? Will they get in trouble for asking for help too early, etc., etc.? And an employer can basically go through and tick these off once they speak to their new young employee. And then some more high impact, I guess, things that they can also do. So assign a buddy before they even arrive. And then following on from that, this is more so the first day checklist. So introduce them as a person, not a title. Share some kai, even if some morning tea, some quick snacks, what have you. Give them a space that's clearly theirs. So instead of a station that's constantly moving around and they just don't feel like there's a specific part of the business that I guess they are in control of, I suppose. And obviously try not to start them on the most hectic day possible. And these are, like I said, a few more learnings from the resource. So silence isn't disengagement. So young people consistently said that they were afraid to ask questions, not because they didn't have them, but because they didn't know if it was safe to ask and didn't want to seem silly or, I suppose, get in trouble for them. and just a few more checklists just to make them feel better and feel more seen after their first day. So end of day 5-minute check-in and say, no question is stupid, but out loud. Moving on to the first week. So this is just check in, don't check up. So daily 5-minute check-in each day for the first week. Give them a task where they can win. So instead of starting them on something that's really difficult, that has some sort of crazy learning curve, it's just some easy things to build those confidence blocks that will help them throughout the ongoing period of their job. And this is a very important thing, is to acknowledge what they do well, right? Even if an employer might think, oh, yep, they did it great. It's always great to just give that motivation and that support when they do something well or do something correct, especially early on, and introduce them to the why of the business. And yeah, so just make good visible before asking for it. So instead of this, do a good job on this, just use your initiative. You should know how to handle that. It's here's what done looks like. Here's when I need it by. And if you're not sure, ask, right? So yeah, write down what you expect before the week even starts and book a week to check in now. And then finally, this is just a bit of a get to know your person, and this would be for the employer to keep a record of potentially. So how did they prefer to receive feedback? So direct and straight away maybe, or after had a while to sit with it. This is sort of questions that an employer would ask their employee explicitly, I suppose, and then the employee can take notes of this. So how do you prefer to ask questions? Is there anything about how you work best that I should know, etc., etc. So yeah, that's basically the minimal viable product that I've built out for this project, just taking all of the resources and research information from what the young people had to say and putting it in a format that an employer can actually digest and do something with. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Just make a comment that is it's awesome, but it was a high fidelity kind of style model, so that we haven't locked in design, colors, all of that kind of stuff. That's just the functionality, so that we understand as a team really how this resource can be accessed really easily by our employers. Just a quick note, we did create a report on the process, so you can check that out on our website. The start of the report is about 30 pages, but we also included appendices, which is like huge. It's about 60 pages or something, or 90 pages, can't remember now. But it has all that primary source material in it. So if you're an organization that's really interested in doing a bit more of a deep dive, like maybe you are a youth-focused organization, you might want to check out that resource too. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. There's my contact details. If anyone's interested in finding out a bit more about this project, please do get in touch. I'll be here as well for the Q&A at the end, but I'm going to now hand back to Matthew to move on to the next section. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks. That presentation was so interesting. It's the work you guys are doing and are continuing to do. It's really incredible, really interesting. So we're now going to shift into the next part of our session, where I'll be asking each of our young panelists a few more specific questions. So we're going to start with Logan. So my question to you is why are you excited about this project and the work of YEA, and what are you working on right now with the project team, kind of thing?
Yeah, thank you very much, Matthew. So I think it's because I actually relate to a lot of what the research found, right? So I'm 18 now. I've been operating in the professional space for the last 3 years. And the stuff that came back from the rangatahi, not knowing the unwritten rules, right? Not feeling safe to ask questions, that's not abstract to me, right? And what I like about YEA is that they went and actually asked young people what they needed before building anything. And that sounds quite obvious, but it genuinely doesn't happen enough. So being involved in something that started from that place felt very worth doing in my mind. In terms of my role for this project, so I'm youth lead on the pilot team. So in practice, that means I'm working alongside Tamara, our project manager, Eva from Student Job Search, and Emma, of course. And my job is to basically, like I said, keep asking whether we're building something that actually makes sense from the young person's perspective, not just in theory, but when, let's just say, a real 17-year-old walks into their first shift on Monday morning, right? So we kicked this pilot off in April with Student Job Search as a partner. So right now it's just sort of about testing what we built against reality. And in terms of what we're working on right now with the project team, we're mid-pilot, so a lot of it is just watching how employers actually engage with the tool, sort of what clicks, what doesn't, and my focus is making sure that as we get feedback and start iterating, the rangatahi voice doesn't quietly get edited out, and obviously that can happen. So you start optimizing, especially if you start optimizing for what's easier to deliver. And the harder, more human stuff does get softened. So part of my job is to push back on that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. So yeah, my next question is for Cam. So what are you noticing about students and how they are volunteering and or wanting to work?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good question. And I think I'm lucky to have quite a bit of exposure to it across a couple of my roles. I think that particularly with volunteer roles, there would be probably three big things that a student volunteer is looking for right now. So from a role, they want employability, they want community, and they want unique experiences. And I think I'll speak to those all kind of individually quickly here. So I think employability is a big one. I mean, like everyone knows the state of the job market. We know where we're at. We know that the graduate roles are getting cut. We know that people are struggling, and so that is why we want to make, of course, the employability space, easy for youth to access. Folks are increasingly looking to volunteering as a way to get skills even more than before. Now that they can access jobs, they want to gain skills, gain experience through volunteering. And so this is not that you need to give someone a role with an immense amount of depth. It's not that you need to give them a full-time job as a volunteer role, right? It's not what I'm suggesting. But I think that folks that are given roles that have experience and they're able to work in a team, to work in a professional environment, to deal with some of these systems that they will encounter in the job market, then they can demonstrate that, and it makes them that much more employable going forward. And so people they want confidence, and they want to kind of develop these skills while giving back, while volunteering, while doing something that they want to do, right? Of course, students and young people are always going to be looking for community, right? I think humans are social animals, and we can be pretty disconnected in some cases. Young people, we have a lot less public spaces, etc. So I think people want community. So I think my next recommendation is, I think front-facing roles are pretty hot at the moment, as well as just giving someone a real core team that they can work with. So don't send them off on their own. Make sure that they have that support, and they can develop these relationships with one or two folks or with a huge group of folks that allow them to really feel that belonging. And I think that was reflected in the report as well, relating to jobs. And then the last point I would have would be unique experiences. I think this is becoming increasingly more important, especially in what I run and what I contribute to. So I think at the end of the day, folks love contributing to social causes. They love a tree planting. They love a beach cleanup. They love kind of doing this work, and they want to do this work. But students are time poor. Students are cash poor. This is true of a lot of young people, I think, and so they're really seeking volunteering as a way to experience things that they couldn't otherwise experience and wouldn't otherwise have access to. So like a really simple example, kind of just to dumb it down, would be, you want to run a beach cleanup, and we're quite a few of us are in Marcail in Wellington, and you might be tempted to host the beach cleanup, at a beach in town at the harbor. It's not very interesting. It's very accessible to students, right? We can kind of walk there, no big deal. If instead you host it on the South Coast and you provide transport, maybe that's going to double your turnout, because you're giving this mobility, you're giving this unique experience to people who crave that but might not have the means to access it. So I think the more you can make your volunteer roles and your positions interesting and unique, and it doesn't have to be that they're all fun and games, but just one or two aspects that young people would want to access but maybe couldn't otherwise. I think that is a huge draw for people, and I see roles like that do much better than other things that are offered.
Cool. Thanks, Cam. So my next question is to Marcail. So just what's your experience been like as a volunteer with Take 10?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I started volunteering with Take 10 back in 2021 when I was a first year uni student. I got involved with them kind of out of that idea of like, young people don't have a lot of money and a lot of time. And for me, it was actually originally a way to kind of have something to do on a Friday or Saturday night that didn't cost money, but still meant I could kind of like see my friends and go out and be social and have fun. Um, One of the great perks of volunteering with Take 10 is they provide you with food on shift, and they also provide you with some energy drinks, because that 10 p.m. till 3 a.m. can be a bit of a long night for some people. So that was like a massive pull for me as a first year student, was knowing that I could go out. I was in halls, so I could go out, I could get some nice food. At the time it was Tommy Million's pizza, which was awesome. I could, get an energy drink. I could still be out in town and see my friends and hang out with people and meet new people and be social, but I wasn't spending any money and I wasn't drinking. Um, so it was a really awesome organization to get involved with. Once I started volunteering there, they've got a really awesome team of volunteers and team leads. And I found a really great community there. And so I continued working there. I loved the mahi that they were doing for city safety. I was really passionate about that. I'd been to some protests and things when I'd first come to uni about city safety and kind of working with those organizations. So it was just a really awesome way for me to incorporate all of those things that I wanted to be doing and kind of perks of the job into a volunteer experience that was something nice to put on the CV as well.
Cool. Thank you, Marcail. So I was informed that I'm to ask myself a question, so bear with me when I do that. So that question to me is, what do I think about organisations who don't allow under 18 volunteers, and how do I think they can be engaged? So I will now answer my own question. So I think if we put aside the age requirements that exist for genuine health and safety reasons, because that's another combo, I think, I really can absolutely understand why some organisations really do hesitate to involve under 18 volunteers. I think even in my experience, when the Youth Impact Project was high school based with lots of high school students, it was harder to get consistent commitment. Volunteers at a high school age are really limited to after school hours, which really doesn't always align with the typical working week. So with volunteer managers, that can just be kind of a problem. And I think from that perspective, I do definitely completely get it. And I know anyone who has ever managed volunteers knows that the dream is simply having people who can reliably show up, and that can be more challenging. But I don't think that means high school age young people should be excluded. I think it means that we need to be engaged differently. So what I think this looks like is offering a lot of one-off volunteering opportunities or a more casual approach. I recognise there can be challenges with that, but I think if you just exclude all those people, there are so many young people who are really wanting to make a difference in this community, and why not let them? So yeah, I think overall difficult but really necessary to engage high school age volunteers. And I think really what it requires is just a sit-down conversation to sort out a plan which works for everyone involved. And I think it's really important to be creative when making that plan, because students, they really do want to volunteer, so we just need to kind of make it really accessible for them. Okay, well that was my answer to my own question. So we're going to open up with kind of a broader discussion with our speakers. So I'm going to pose a question, and each of our panelists will have the chance to kind of share their perspective. I think this is where we're really going to get to explore different experiences, approaches, and ideas that kind of shape the work that we're all doing. So the first question that I'm going to pose is kind of based off of that good youth employer research. So I think, what is kind of your main takeaway from it, from that presentation? And if you can, how do you think it translates in volunteer context? So we'll start with Logan.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So I'd say the thing that struck me most was how much damage happens before anything's even actually gone wrong, right? So the early exit risk is highest in the first few days and weeks, right? Not because young people are necessarily flaky, but because no one told them those unwritten rules. Every workspace has them. When to take a break, when it's okay to ask the same question twice, maybe what on time actually means. And for experienced workers, those things are invisible, but a young person in their first role, they're landmines essentially. And I don't think it's any different for volunteers in that sense, of just not having that true and utter clarity from day one or even the week before day one.
Cool. Thanks, Logan. So I'll pass over to Cam.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really want to focus in on the point about quality work, and that young people are aspiring for roles that they can really meaningfully engage in. I think that transfers really well to volunteering, right? I think that one of the strengths of volunteering is that it's an easy pitch. I get to go up to people and I get to say, look, you're gonna help your community, you're gonna engage in this amazing organization, and they're very receptive to that. And so I think that it's a real opportunity. People want to engage in work that is high quality. So don't make them do things that are menial necessarily when you can avoid it, and make sure that you do you include in your pitch like what you're doing for the community, for the social environment, and why you're important. Because I think that does really matter to young people, maybe more than people realize.
Nice. And same question again to Marcail.
Yeah, I think the research in the report is really awesome to see. I know I probably came into the workplace when I was about 15 or so, but I've got 5 younger siblings and they're all kind of in various stages of joining the workforce at the moment, and there were a lot of things in the presentation as we were going through that I know my siblings call me about all the time to talk about how they don't know what they're unclear on what their boss's expectations are or what is generally accepted in the workplace and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think there's some stuff in especially that guide that would have really helped if their employers were doing that.
Yeah, and for me, I really think from that presentation, what stuck out so much to me was that guide, because I think I would have really liked having that guide, and I would have loved when I got my first minimum wage job to say to them, have this guide and give it a good read and please do a really good job. But yeah, no, I think it's such interesting research, and yeah, it's just really cool. So, let me scroll down so I can find my next question. Okay, so what has your experience been like as a young person in the working/volunteering space? What have been mainly your biggest positives and what have been your biggest challenges? So once again, we'll start with Logan.
Thank you, Matthew. So I sort of sidestepped the traditional employment path entirely. I haven't had much of an experience within the volunteering space because I've just been really busy over the past 3 years. My main focus has been building my businesses, and I started my own thing partly because I didn't have any other option at the time. I was like 15, I was unemployable, recent migrant from South Africa. But what I did have was the experience of being 15, 16, 17, trying to operate in professional spaces where nobody takes you quite seriously until you've proved yourself a few times over. And I do feel like the research does reflect a lot of that with other young people in those spaces. And like I obviously said, young people, they're not afraid to ask questions because they don't care. They're afraid because they genuinely don't know if it's safe to ask. And I feel like that gap between we're approachable, just ask anything, and what it actually feels like to be new and unsure, I have been in it. So yeah.
Nice. So I'll now pass that question over to Cam. Okay, nope. We will go to Marcail.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely there's been a lot of positives. I think volunteering especially, and in workplaces where when I've been working for NGOs and not-for-profits, building really awesome communities around things that I care about and making a difference in both like the world, but also in individual people's lives. It's one of the things that I've loved the most about a lot of my volunteer roles is that they've been quite front-facing and quite social and working with people and just having chats with them on a one-on-one. And that has really, it's been really awesome to have a chat with someone and see that you've kind of made a difference to their day. Some challenges have definitely been, I think, a lack of clarity. When you're volunteering, especially, I think there can be some blurred lines about what your responsibilities are and You know, how much notice you need to give to someone if you end up sick and not able to turn up, that sort of thing. And I think that's definitely been challenging in navigating the volunteer space. Also, different organizations have totally different expectations of you as a volunteer. And when you're not being paid for something, that can be tricky to work out kind of how much responsibility you're meant to be taking on or you want to take on. So yeah.
Nice, thanks. And we'll go to Cam.
Perfect, thanks. I think, yeah, I mean, I would say a positive, undoubtedly a positive for me in work and in volunteering is that a young person, as a young person, you're very well placed to break the rules. And so I wouldn't suggest that that in a way that's gonna, jeopardize your position or jeopardize anyone's health. But I think that I can do things in a new way, and it's accepted that I take my own approach to things, and that I really grab hold of projects and can take ownership over them. And I've had a really good time doing that. I think being able to say to someone, I'm the youth voice, kind of trust me on this, and then seeing it come together in a way that is really appealing and really accessible to people, because young people have new ideas in these spaces. That's been super rewarding. Challenges, I think these have kind of both been touched on briefly. I think that like legitimacy as a young person who really is getting involved in these spaces, you want to be taken seriously, and you want to be given the time of day. And I've had good and bad experiences in that sense. I think now moving into a place where I'm where a lot of folks are really becoming more supportive of young people in these spaces, which is lovely. As well as that line to walk, right? It's very easy to take on too much in a volunteer capacity or in a work capacity, and overstrain yourself as someone who's still learning the ropes. And so just making sure that I keep things handled, don't overdo it. And it's very easy very tempting to do so. But
Thanks. I think for me, my biggest positive has been when I've entered new spaces where I'm still learning, I've found being the young one in the room meant so many people were really willing to offer me mentorship, offer me advice. They were willing to say, hey, after this meeting, do you want to chat about some of the things this might have meant or what this meant? So I think that's what I've really appreciated most from entering new organizations. They're just so kind of willing. Well, from my experience, they're really willing to help me out. I think my biggest challenge that I've faced has been if I've been in a role where I'm kind of told I have agency, but in practice it's not really the case. And I've kind of got a much older person leaning down my neck or breathing down my neck, kind of saying, oh, you got to do this, do this, do this. When it's like, but if I'm a young leader, let me lead. I think that's probably been my biggest negative. So my next question for us is, what do we think the biggest mistakes not-for-profits make when trying to engage and retain young people? So once again, to Logan.
Thank you, Matt. So unfortunately, I don't really have much to say on this point, as I've only really been in this space for about a month. But what I did really like was what Cam said earlier about making sure that every, I guess, opportunity is unique when people are working for not-for-profits. Like you said, taking them to a different beach instead of the one that they've been to 1,000 times since they were born, right? So I'll probably just pass over to Cam.
Absolutely. Thank you, Logan. Yeah, I think I do think that unique experience thing is a good point, right? I think that folks want experience, they want to contribute to their communities, but just please don't ignore that that people love to have a little bit in it for them. There's at the end of the day always going to be a little bit of self-interest, and it's not it's never from in kind of a negative way, in a self-serving way. It's just that people's time is really valuable, and they really want to feel valued at their organizations. So making sure that that when you design a role, or that when you are managing someone in this space, that you're doing it really intentionally, and you're just making sure to slip in one or two things to retain that volunteer and make them feel valued. I think that can sometimes get lost in the busy work. I think in terms of accessing volunteers, just make sure that you are using the right channels. I think that often going from youth to youth is a lot easier than going from yourself to youth. And I think that's easier to say in my position, right? But you don't want things to be top down. You want to find a delegate. You want to find someone within groups who can vouch for you, who can support you. Be it a student, be it someone you already have on your team, and then kind of go from there. It's a real grassroots thing rather than kind of just shoving things in people's faces. So just make sure to access your audience in a very personal sense, and then it'll kind of spread from there, would be my suggestion.
And Marcail.
Yeah. So I think with not-for-profits, and I'll talk mainly to volunteering, but I think a lot of these points can be kind of considered in terms of employees as well. One of the biggest mistakes that I often see when they're engaging with young people is not engaging with them meaningfully. So kind of like what Cam was talking about with working out what their self-interest is. So, what are the reasons why they're at your not-for-profit? Why have they gotten involved? And then to get that meaningful engagement, looking at their like what you'd call your mutual interests. So working out, why are they there? What's driving them to be involved with your not-for-profit, and what are the things that you can, like, roles and jobs that you can give them that are going to engage the best with that, so that you're creating a really supportive space where people are actually working on things that they care about and they want to work on. You're going to get the best work out of people when they're doing that as well. People are way more likely to do, awesome work and be, go above and beyond if it's work that they genuinely care about. And with that genuine engagement, you also need to make sure that you've got kind of defined goals and outcomes going in there. Kind of throwing back to what I was saying before, with as a volunteer, you sometimes don't know what your responsibilities are. So going in there, finding out what that mutual interest is, and then coming out of, that conversation with some defined goals and outcomes that, you as a, between both the not-for-profit and your volunteers, like, what's the best outcome going to be coming out of there? And I think that that's super, super important. So yeah, why are your volunteers or your employees, I guess, there at your organization? Why is your organization there? What's your purpose? And where can you find kind of the best common ground between those things?
Cool, thanks. I think for me, a big mistake that not-for-profits make is not kind of promoting themselves as a creative environment, or an environment which allows people to grow. Because I really think, for me, when I've gone to places, it's like, if I don't see that there's any room for growth or development, why would I go? And for retention, I think it stays in that same kind of space, because we don't want to be in a boring environment. You want to be in an environment that's full of energy, full of just everything that, what am I on about? Just full of energy. And yeah, I think for me, one thing that I've found really key for retention has been offering ways of professional development. So whether that's kind of internal, or saying, hey, we've got this course or something going on, we want to send you to that and help you grow in kind of a different space from our own. So I really think for me, the key is just ensuring that there is room for development, and that it's a really vocal kind of advertising of it. So my next question for us is, what is the most annoying myth you have heard about young people in the workplace or the volunteering space? So we'll start with Logan again.
Thank you. So I'd say the most annoying myth that I've personally heard about young people, and also from the research and resources, is that quiet means disengagement. All right, so silence in the workplace isn't necessarily apathy for a lot of young people. It's just not feeling engaged yet, like Marcail said. And sometimes someone isn't fully showing up because they haven't connected with why the work actually matters. And so once they do, the commitment will become real after that. And mistaking that process for laziness is one of the fastest ways to lose someone great in your business or not-for-profit. So.
And Cam.
Yeah, look, I think there's kind of in the same vein that a young person who comes into your organization inherently isn't ready to lead, is what I would say. I think that it's good to have a real consideration for growth in folks and ensuring that they are well supported. But I see young folks, very, very fresh folks, getting stuck in positions of leadership, and they immediately grow to it, and they really take to those kind of roles. And so, let your youth lead where it's appropriate. And I think that you'll see some really great results. I've been incredibly impressed with folks I've worked with.
And Marcail?
Probably on the same note, I feel like a lot of the myths around young people in the workplace are around unengagement. And yeah, I'd say I think I find that kind of idea of disengagement quite frustrating. Young people have a lot of things going on, and I think considering that they're often, especially in the spaces that I've been working in, are often quite concerned about like the political state of the world. And so when things are going on, it can be hard for them to focus on the work at hand when it doesn't seem to automatically link to what you've just read in the news. We've got like a 24-hour news cycle and things, which means everything's going very fast in our brains in terms of what's happening politically. And yeah, I think just trying to engage with them, work out where they're at, and making sure that there's community. Because again, if you've built community, people feel a responsibility to that community. They want to get involved. They want to be helping the people around them out. And so yeah, creating those supportive environments is really important.
Yeah, and I think for me it's similar on that vein of kind of whether they're being lazy or not being super committed. But I think overall, complaints about that really don't kind of acknowledge that as young people, there are so many different things going on in our lives. It is really a big capacity problem. So sometimes we may not be able to pick up a random shift that is sprung upon us, or, stay an extra 2 hours when you've got an assessment due, or things along that line. But yeah, I really think that's kind of my most annoying myth, that we're just not committed and lazy. So my final question to you all: if right now an employer came to you seeking advice on hiring their first young person, what would you say to them? Now, this can be in a volunteer space, in a non-volunteer space, but what would you say? So, Logan.
So I'd have to say start before day one, right? So send a message the night before, where to go, what to wear, what the day will look like, and one line that says, you won't be expected to know everything the day that you arrive, right? And that one line can sort of change how someone walks through the door. And also, more importantly, pick a buddy before they start, not necessarily a manager, but someone close enough in seniority that no question will feel embarrassing. So the research was clear with that is one of the single most important things when it comes to the first few weeks is the pick a buddy, right? So not necessarily a formal regimented program, just one specific person that they know that they can go to at any point in time, and do those two things, and you're already for most of the workplace.
Cool. And Cam?
I think, yeah, for a general piece of advice, I would just go straight for, show them that you care about them. I think it's easy to walk into situations as a young person and think that you're marginalized or you're not going to be heard as much. And that often isn't the case. It just kind of we've manufactured some things to feel that way. So I think if you sit down with a young person, you make them feel heard, you make them feel valued and cared for, and like you're really excited to have them at your organization, and they're going to get on board and they're going to do a killer job, and you're going to love working with them.
And Marcail?
I'd say probably three things. One is being really honest and clear on what your expectations are in terms of time, in terms of outcomes, in terms of, when you expect them to be available. Finding that mutual interest, like I said before, working out why are they there, why do they want to be in this role, and trying to kind of make sure that their work is going to be interesting to them if you want to be able to retain them. And also giving a really clear guidelines and clear processes for if things go wrong, or a person who they know that they can go and talk to. Because if someone makes a mistake, especially if it's in the first day or the first week, that's a really, really nerve-wracking experience. You don't want to go to your new boss at your new job and be like, I've just totally screwed this up. So making sure that they know what the best pathway is to go through if something does go wrong can just take a lot of that anxiety away.
Yeah, I'd agree. I really think having someone that they know, or that we know that you can just talk to, that can be maybe a bit more informal, just keep it chill. And I think my other bit of advice would be, you don't need to reinvent the wheel for working with younger people. You kind of just need to communicate well and figure out what works for you all. So we did have some questions from the audience. They are on my phone, so I will hold this up and read it like this. So this is a question for Logan. So the question is, we have standards and guidelines as Word documents, which are easy to edit and update with info. but the feedback we receive from youth is generally that they want more visual formats / videos, which are harder and more expensive to produce. Do you have any ideas about the middle ground with visual accessibility appeal and depth of accuracy of info?
Absolutely. So if it's in terms of a resource for young people to access with, I guess, visually engaging elements, there's so many tools out there nowadays, mostly, I guess, AI-related tools that can build these beautiful sites for you in a matter of minutes, right? You basically give it all the context that you need and explain or give it a couple examples even of sites that you believe would be appealing, and it can really make something amazing in only a couple of minutes, and you don't have to go through the route of hiring an expensive designer and waiting for weeks and weeks for just sort of a small resource that would be of benefit to the young people. So I would say definitely taking a look at some of those vibe coding platforms would be an excellent way to start working on some of those.
You might, sorry, I'll just jump in there. Logan, you might want to explain for some people what you mean there by the vibe coding.
Okay, so back in not back in the day, like a few years ago, you would have to take your idea to some sort of graphic designer or coder or who have you, and explain it, and then probably pay a couple $1,000, wait a month or two, maybe 3 to get something done. Nowadays, there's infinite different platforms that you can go to, mainly things like Lovable, things like Base 44. There's the ChatGPT can even help you with that. And you basically explain your idea the same way that you would to a graphic designer that you're hiring to make that, or web developer. Give it a couple of examples, and it really can come up with something very similar to what you're looking for. And you can also iterate very, very easily, quickly, and even better, cheap, basically. So you're not forking out thousands of dollars for just a resource, I suppose.
Cool. This next question is for both Logan and Emma. So was there anything you heard from either rangatahi or employers during this project that really surprised you?
Yeah, should I jump in first? Because I was there during that process. Logan can reflect on what he's read after the process. For me, it's not, I mean, it constantly surprises me, unsurprisingly surprises me, I'm not sure. When each generation has their own unique experience growing up and exploring their environments and so on, and so that creates their knowledge base. And so what happens is that we assume that knowledge base is universal, and it's not. It's really specific to our generation. And one thing that kept coming up was this clash of expectations based on that knowledge base, right? So just to give you a classic example, this is really important for the neurodiverse community as well. There's a young person who was in the neurodivergent working group who said in one of their jobs, they were so exhausted that they almost quit their job because they found the social engagement too taxing for them. And so they said to their boss one day, they said, look, I'm really sorry. I just don't think I can do this anymore. I'm going to have to resign. I'm just so exhausted from all the social engagements. And he looked at her and was like, but they're optional. And she was like, they're optional? Like, what? Like, no clue, right? But he just assumed that she would realize you didn't have to go to all of them. It'd be great if she showed up to some of them. It's that assumed knowledge. I think particularly for like boomers and Gen X like myself, we forget that a lot of young people like have a very different, particularly with, the way the internet's gone, social media, etc. Their lived experience is quite different to what ours was growing up as well. And but also the other thing that always comes up is that there's still a whole lot of similarities, right? So like sometimes when I've been in the role of like putting young people into employment and the employer's like going, bloody young people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, were you an angel when you were 18? And they'll be like, oh no, I was a little shit. So like I think like there's so much commonality and humanity, right, that we can forget that as well. And that was what the project was really about, finding those commonalities, acknowledging the differences, and figuring out a way to bridge those gaps between the two. That's my piece that I came away with from this project. Logan, was there anything that surprised you when you were looking through all the research?
Absolutely. Honestly, the buddy thing surprised me quite a bit, right? Not the fact that it matters, right? That makes sense, but how consistently it came up, and also how simple it actually was. The feedback wasn't, we need better onboarding systems or we need more structured feedback. It was, give me one person I know from day one that I can ask the same question over and over without feeling embarrassed. That's it. And most workspaces don't even do that, I suppose. It's such a low effort thing that really makes a huge difference, and it just, I guess, isn't happening, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%, Logan. That was the other thing that struck me as well, was that the asks from the young people weren't extreme or overboard. Okay, there was a couple who were like, yeah, we'd like a fridge full of free drinks, and we'd like, you know, like cheese and crackers every Friday and what have you. But most young people were just like, I just want to know what I'm supposed to do. I want training was the other big thing young people are asking for. I want better and more training. They're not unreasonable asks, I guess, right? They're what, and someone mentioned, I saw in the Q&A, like, you know, this stuff is like good for any, you know, anybody new walking in, regardless of their age. And that's kind of our principle. What's good for young people is good for everyone, right? And like I said, they're not big asks. It just takes a bit of thought and a bit of time and consideration. And so hopefully this resource that we create will help you guys as well, because it will be freely available. I should say that once it's created, we're just got to get through this pilot, and then we'll have something beautiful for you all. Cool. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you. So now I've got a kind of general question that we've gotten kind of to everybody, and it's really on the topic of rewarding and recognizing young volunteers. So I guess the question is there a need for a different approach? And I guess what would that difference be? We can take a moment to think, because this will... I think for me, my opinion on it is that when we're doing rewards and recognizing people, I really don't think it should be structured in a way where people get first or second or third. I don't think we should be ranking young volunteers against each other, whether that's on hours or whatever they do. I think it should really be like, you've all done a really good impact. And yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, I can jump in. So one of the things that I heard, and I've seen firsthand as well, was one young person said, my boss thanked me at the end of every day. And that meant a lot to me. And so it's something that I've always done when I've managed staff and volunteers. It's always in the conversation or the end of the day with a thank you. And it's such a little thing to do. It costs you nothing. It takes you a split second of time, but it actually means a lot to the person receiving that gratitude.
Cool. Well, that is the end of our Q&A time. So yeah, I really want to say thank you to all of you who have spoken today. It was so incredible to hear from all of your experiences, your insights. It's such an amazing topic that we get to talk about, and I really love the opportunity as young people to come together to kind of talk about these things. There's a massive thank you to everyone. Helen's just sent me a message on Slack, so that's why I've looked down. Just big thank you to everyone. I think really for my final thoughts, it's young people need a place to grow. They need support. It's a challenging world, and I just think as long as organisations have really strong communication with us, it can all work really, really well. So now as we come to the end of our session, I'm going to close us off with a karakia. Kia whakaerea te tapu, kia wātia Aotearoa, kia tūru ki whakatahai, kia tūru ki whakatahai, humie, huie, tāikie. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.